Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Short and to the Point. Jessica Kleinschmidt here for the Comeback in Awful Announcing. We had football last week. We can finally get back to what your girl knows and loves the most, baseball. My dear friend, Vinnie Pasquantino, stops by. He is, of course, the first baseman for the Kansas City Royals. Always love having him on. I've known him for years. We actually met because I was on his podcast once. Yes, Vinnie had his own podcast with our good friend, Alex Fuse, who I'm still friends with to this day. We're all kind of doing like good things with our careers. So it's good to see that Vinny's doing the same thing. He's coming off an injury-ridden 2023. He's feeling good. Time to return to spring training is certainly there. So excited for him and what he is going to embark on for the 2024 season. He had an interesting offseason, not just in the rehab process, but he thought around his wedding time that he was getting traded to the Miami Marlins. That, of course, didn't happen. And he's happy to be back with Kansas City. So we talked about everything on the team, really. You know, Bobby Witt Jr. gets an extension. A lot of good, solid parts came into the offseason, more monetary value going into that team, something that they're not used to, and a great clubhouse to boot. So without further ado, here is my chat with Vinnie Pasquantino. Well, like I said, Vinnie is here. Vinnie, my friend, it's so good to have you on Short and to the Point. How's it going?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. And, you know, this is a long time coming, and I have a lot to go over with you, but we've been friends for so long. But it's kind of cool to just watch you grow. Like, I knew you before everybody else did, and that's not me bragging, but it's just like, I can't wait for him to have the stage that you have, and not just from your baseball playing ability, but who you are as a person. And let's start there, because you have this kind of like, I don't give a fuck attitude. This is who I am. You're outspoken. You're real. Where does that come from?
It comes from being a fan of the game and knowing what I liked of players, and just knowing that people like authenticity. There's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
I'm not perfect.
You can act it. You don't have to say it. It's the words. That word's nuts. Like, what is that?
Yeah. Basically just, I don't know. We don't really have a whole lot of time to play this game, to be fortunate like I am to be able to do it. So while I have this platform, I don't really want to change. There's no reason to. So for me, I'm just happy with myself and being me. And if you don't like that, you don't like that. If you do, great. If not, that's all right too.
Was that something that how you've always been, or was it like a learning curve for you?
It's kind of how I've always been. I don't have what I would call like a polarizing personality, but there's no middle ground. You either just don't like me or you do. There's nobody that is in the middle. So for me, now I understand that and just know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay with me, because not everybody's mine either.
I agree. And that's a good mentality to have. I'm the same way. I feel like the moment I woke up and was just being Jess, like things were great. But when it comes to that, it's interesting, especially in baseball, like we're trying to market players, and I know a lot of them have to hold back. They don't want to be, you know, out of context or just get a snippet of a full-on interview. But I feel like the guys are kind of opening up more. Would you say that that's fair? We're getting more of a better overview of how these guys are in real life.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of starts in the clubhouses. Now veterans are guys that grew up with their phones too. Not necessarily as kids, but as they got older, they had their phones, where it used to be more taboo to really say anything.
Yeah.
Basically say a whole lot without saying really anything. And now guys have more freedom, and, you know, people are more okay with you being yourself outside of the field. And I think that's helping a whole lot with that, because guys are more comfortable being in the spotlight. I mean, from, 15 on, phones are out everywhere. You're always being filmed. Everything's going on like that. So guys are getting better at how to act publicly. And to be honest, it's making people, in my mind, better humans too, because then you're not just saying things because you can, and you're not being like, now it's everything's on the table. So I think it's just getting better because guys are growing up with it.
I agree. And I was kind of nervous about the transition too. I was in like the millennial phase where we had cell phones not as early as everybody did, but I definitely embraced it more. And I'm glad that we're past that. It's like it's happening. Everything's on cell phones. Like you can film a freaking music video on a cell phone now, and people are doing that. So we're embracing it. But you're heading to spring training too soon. You're in your, I guess, off season, but you're also rehabbing an injury. Spring training, is that the same timeline coming off of your injury?
Yeah, so I'm good to go. I've been very adamant with the Royals that I would very much like to play the first game of spring training just because I need to go prove to myself that I'm healthy. So I'm good to go. I got cleared a few months ago, so everything has just been getting to a point where I'm ready to rock, and I feel like I'm there. And I'm just super excited to just go be a baseball player again and just go do what I love to do.
And you said we were talking about Jalen Thompson before we came on. He's a friend. You and him were both on my A's Cast show last year. I love you all both so much. And he got a quote from you. You were an animal in a cage, something along those lines. So how are you feeling now? Because when you take a step back, you're injured. Your boys are playing on the field without you. And when you're on the IL, you're kind of like not even thought about. So how does that mess with your mentality when you want to go out and perform?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm fortunate that this has only been a 9-month injury or so. I mean, there's plenty of guys that I train with now that I've trained with previously, or just that I don't know at all that have had 2-year plus type injuries. So for me, you could kind of consider this a short injury, even though I missed like 101 games or whatever it was last year. So in some ways it was long. In some ways it's not as bad as other people. All right, you never have it as bad as the next guy, or there's always somebody who has it worse. But it sucked. And for me, I really wanted to be out there with the guys. I mean, it's what I love to do, is compete and play baseball. Like I've said it a few times, but I'm a baseball player. So not being able to do it really sucks. Mm-hmm. And, I was able to add fuel to the fire with that time off, be able to make some changes to some different things I was doing. Excited about that. But I'd prefer to never have that time again to be able to make those adjustments, because I'd prefer to just be out there with everybody playing 162.
And you also are very adamant about this Royals team in 2024 being a playoff team. So what characteristics and like the skills are that you guys possess in order to make this a playoff team?
Yeah, I'll get a better look at it next week when I start seeing everybody out there. But I think we're one of the teams that spent the most money this offseason. Mm-hmm. I would consider the Dodgers an anomaly.
That's like,
with the amount of money that they spent, but we attacked this offseason, and as a player, that's all you can really ask for from your front office. So now it's our turn to go show them that they made the good moves of who they decided to keep, who they decided to go get. It's our turn now to go prove our front office right.
And we'll get to Bobby Witt Jr. in a second, but while you're looking at your phone before this extension was given to him, or you're hearing about all of these names being signed, these transactions, the money being thrown, that's a new thing for the Royals to be doing. So what was that like to see that they're actually investing in y'all this time around?
Yeah, it's really cool. And I don't think that they were necessarily wrong with how last year went, but kind of before the year it was said, hey, it's an evaluation year. This is what's kind of going on. You never really want to hear that as a player, because then it kind of normally means we don't expect the team to be very good. And that's not necessarily what they meant. It was a quote that was taken and then it kind of took off.
Right.
Because every year is an evaluation year. If I suck, like, I'm being evaluated on sucking. If I play really well, I'm being evaluated on playing really well. So every year is an evaluation year. But we don't hear that anymore. They've said this is no longer an evaluation. It's time for us to step on the gas and go. And I mean, to call a spade, like, every year you're playing for your own job. You're playing for your front office jobs. Like, every year is important. And this is another step forward for us as an organization to make that push towards the playoffs. And we're really excited about it with some of the new guys that we brought in. We're hoping for some really good performances this year.
And the team made a big commitment to Bobby Witt Jr. and the monetary value was definitely there. We know the numbers attached. Why is he so important to Kansas City and so deserved of this massive contract?
Well, I think when you start talking about importance of simply a baseball team, I'll get into Kansas City in a second, but you've locked up your shortstop, which most argue is one of the most important position on the field for the next 14 years, assuming he opts in and they opt in and everything works out that way. But that's a good place to start for building a team. So from their perspective, they're definitely looking at it as we can lock up this young guy who everybody loves. Nobody has anything bad to say. He's one of the best players in the league. He's the face of the franchise. We can lock him up for the next 14 years. We got that done. Now we can move on to everything else and figure out what we need to build around him. So from that aspect, just from a simple baseball perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. From a Kansas City perspective, with the two faces of each franchises that you now have, not that Salvador Pérez is not anymore.
Yeah.
There's just a bit of a changing of the guard, and Sal would say it himself. It's Bobby's team, and that's something he takes a lot of pride in. So between Mahomes and Bobby Witt, who are also friends, that's a pretty big. Those are two big faces to have in Kansas City, and from a Kansas City perspective as well, to see what a lot of people would consider to be a small market team spending this kind of money, it shows that they believe in this team, they believe in this organization, and they're ready to start winning too.
Yeah, it's great to see. And tell me a little bit about Salvi. And I think you talked about a story where he has a photo of him and former captains, I believe. It was still hanging in his locker. So the fact that he's a leader himself, but he's embracing the leaders before him. Who is Salvador Pérez to you?
He's the captain. He's El Capitan. He's everything to Kansas City. He's the last remaining guy from the World Series runs that was there. There's some training staff members, some support staff members that were on with the organization as well, but he's the last remaining player. He's just so special, and all the guy wants to do is win. This late in his career, and to not, he's been on two really good teams. He's been on some bad teams too, and for him to still be as upset as he is this late in his career of just losing a game in June, something like that, it's very special, and it shows who he is. And he's teaching Bobby the ropes, so to speak, of what it takes to do it in this league. And I'm just happy to be following along.
And you mentioned the bad teams, but you speak about this locker room, and I've been covering the A's for many years where they would win 90 games when they would lose 112 games, but the clubhouse was always still so good. And it's hard to put your finger on what makes a clubhouse good in the ups and the downs. Can you put your finger on it? Because you guys struggled last year. You don't sugarcoat that. You've been very open about that. But how does the clubhouse remain sane?
Well, I think it's just because it's so many games and you're around each other all the time. That's kind of the biggest thing. But to be honest, I'll get back to you after I'm on a winning team and be able to talk about what the differences are there, because I've heard different stories. When you're out of it in June, it's hard to be, you're not crying after every loss, right? It's not that you're not upset because you're still going out there trying to perform, but everybody knows going in, the goal is to make the playoffs. And once it feels like that's out of the way, games in September can sometimes feel a little bit like spring training games. People are trying to get a look at specific players, seeing what they are. So I'm excited to, hopefully be in a race where you show up, you're expected to win. And when you don't win, it's a problem because that's what you're supposed to go do every day. And I'm excited to hopefully have that challenge this year and many years down the road.
Is it a challenge as much as it's like extra pressure now that there's more money being thrown into it and now there's expectations there? Does that fuel the fire?
I hope so. I'll be able to find out more about that this week too, or next week when I get out there. I'm hoping a lot of conversations are happening. I'll be a part of a lot of those conversations that are happening. So yeah, I think the expectations can definitely light a fire. And we're really excited to take on that challenge and see what it brings.
I know you were injured, and it kind of goes without saying we'd like for you to be healthy in 2024, but beyond the injury, what's something that you can take away from the 2023 campaign that you had personally?
Well, that I had personally, it's just keep pedaling that bike. That's basically it, is try to find a way to attack each day, because the season gets so long. You get fatigued relatively quickly, finding a way to get your rest, different things like that. So for me, it's just go be a ball player every day. Go figure out a way to win that day. Do whatever I need to do to be ready at 7 o'clock. And once that happens, I know that I've made my bed that day, and whatever happens during the game, I'm prepared for it.
How do you maintain that? Because we talked about, we know, you and I both know how long a season is, and you can be in the middle of August, me in the middle of July. You could easily say, this is exhausting, I'm done. Are you well equipped to maintain that throughout the season? That can't be easy.
I sure hope so. And the plan is to find out this year. But I think the answer to how is, this is the dream. This is all I've ever wanted to do. So if I'm sitting there in August upset because of how long it's getting, that's on me. That's not on anybody else. Like, at max, I'm 26 right now. I probably won't be playing when I'm 43. So I probably got at best 15 years left. If I can't figure out a way to get through August, then I probably picked the wrong profession. So for me, it's know who I am, know what I love, and realize that even though I might be tired that day, somebody's at that game for the first time ever. There's some kid that's never been to a baseball game before that is seeing it for the first time, and I'd like to leave a good impression on that person.
How do you balance that, though? Because you say you're a baseball player and you want to concentrate on the game, but then you have all these outside expectations of a kid who this is his first game. Maybe the dad told everything about Vinnie, about Bobby Witt Jr. So how do you find the balance when you know there's those, that's a big role to fill for a young kid, but then you still have to go out and perform?
I don't think there really is a way to compartmentalize all of that, rationally. I think you just have to convince yourself that you're ready to go that night and that, all right, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go. I might put on a show tonight. I might stink up the joint. So it's just whatever happens. And that's why I always talk about preparation. Is if I'm prepared and I'm professional in my work, then I've taken care of what I can control. Now I'm going to go attack each at bat, each ground ball, any play that I'm involved in. I'm going to attack those plays. And then, we'll be where we are come the end of the game.
Let's go back to right before you're getting married, your off season. What happened where you thought you possibly could have been traded?
Yeah, so an article came out, and it was by Ken Rosenthal. So it was a legitimate, it's a legitimate article. And I guess I had been mentioned in some trade talks with the Marlins, and that article was released at my welcome party for my wedding. So I was having a good time that night, and then my phone starts lighting up. And I thought I had been traded at first. I thought I was going to be getting phone calls from people telling me I had been moved. But then once I actually read the article, it was clear that I was not. So the article was not saying I had been traded or anything.
It was the article that popped up. It wasn't like your agent calling you and stuff like that.
Well, my agent was at the welcome party. So
okay.
Good. So he was there. So he was making sure that I knew that everything was fine. So that was definitely an interesting way to start the wedding weekend, was to potentially have been traded, but we're not traded. I'm pumped about it. And like I've been saying, I'm really excited for this upcoming season.
How in tune with you are the rumors overall?
It's a give or take.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm on social media a lot and I'll see a bunch of stuff, or I'll get notifications from MLB, whatever, or The Athletic. I am a subscriber to The Athletic, so I see some stuff. I mostly do that to see what's going on with the New York Jets, but Royal stuff still happens there. So it just kind of depends. It's a week by week thing. Sometimes I have no idea what's going on within the game, and sometimes I know probably too much about what's going on.
Yeah. Well, thank you for subscribing to journalism. We love you for that. I told you I have a surprise for you. So this first one is a photo that our good friend Alex Fuse took a screenshot of, and it's me, you, and him doing a podcast. And this is Vinnie. This is Vinnie, first baseman for the Kansas City Royals, in his closet with his jersey behind him, and Alex is hosting a podcast. I was the guest that day. I want to tell everybody, Vinnie was so precious. He was taking notes throughout this entire conversation, like you were schooling everybody. And I'm doing that now too. What was it like to host a podcast? I mean, how did this even come to fruition? I don't even know the story.
So Alex had this podcast. His other co-host dropped out. That would have been in the fall of 2020, I think. Something. It was I think it was 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it was COVID times. Yeah.
So then once COVID hit, I didn't really have anything going on. So we agreed to do it. We came up with a new logo, kind of rebranded what he was doing, spun it to our own type of thing. And then we got it going, and we had a bunch of crazy guests on, you included, people that I never thought I'd be able to talk to ever. So we did that at that time. I mean, look, I was wearing a collared shirt. I was doing everything. I was a chef at a burger joint back then too. So, in between cooking, I was, cooking up a podcast a little bit with Alex, who is a good mutual friend of both of ours. He's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were like episode 6 or 7 or something. We were really grinding them out. At one point, we were putting out an episode every day. That was a little bit too much for us.
Yeah.
We learned a lot in a short amount of time. And it's one of the reasons that I like to come on people's shows is because a lot of people did me favors back then. So I'm trying to return said favor. Not, I'm not doing this show because you did my show. But
that's okay. That's okay. Even if you are, it's fine.
And I'm not. I would tell you if I was. But yeah, it's just funny how life has changed in the last 4 years. I was in my parents' closet of their like townhouse in Virginia, and now I'm in my own house in Nashville. So it's
so crazy. I was thinking about that too, because it feels like that was like 8 years ago with the amount of lives I feel like I've lived. Because same thing, I was sharing a house with somebody. Now I have my own place, and like I was in between stuff, and COVID was just bizarre. When you are on the hosting side of a podcast, what was your biggest surprise? Because you have the personality, and I think we all have the mentality like, oh, I can do this. But what was your biggest surprise?
My biggest surprise is how nervous I'd get to ask questions, because I wanted to try to ask questions that weren't by the book, so to speak. But so then I had to do the research was probably the most surprising part, is trying to figure out, okay, is there anything that seems to annoy this person? Is there anything they like talking about? Is there anything they don't like talking about? So I think the biggest surprise is for especially like a podcast like this that you're putting out, like it's constant, right? You're not just doing it whenever you want. You got to be prepared for what you're doing. And it's hard to prepare for somebody. Like it's very interesting to be on the other side of it and to see different ways to prepare for different guests.
I'm right there with you. I think the prep part, when I first got into it, was interesting. And like, even like prepping for this, like I know you well, I know baseball well, but you still want to do right by you. And for me, it was just listening to previous interviews that you've done, and I want to work off of that. And genuinely, I'm just excited for your 2024 season. So it was just fun to prep for. I'm like, I cannot wait to get updated with everything that Vinny is doing. But yeah, it's just crazy because I was looking at that, and it was like that. I feel like so much time's gone by. Second photo I have for you, it's my personal favorite. And this is just you. It's just you. I can't describe it because it's too beautiful for words, but it did pop up on Twitter. It popped up when I was on my hot girl walk recently, and I had to retweet it. Now it's your profile pic on Twitter or X, whatever you're calling it. Walk me through this, Vinny.
So that was my junior year of college. And so so the backstory behind my hair here specifically is my senior year of high school, I grew out my hair. The entire team grew out our hair. The reason
were y'all watching like Eastbound and Down? It's very Kenny Powers.
The reason we grew out our hair is because I convinced everybody to do it. When I was a junior in high school, I was growing my hair out. The girl I was dating at the time that I went to prom with, she told me I had to cut my hair for prom. So once we broke up, she went to college. I said, screw it. I'm growing my hair out as long as I want. And I convinced the entire team to do it too. So my senior year, everybody grew their hair out. It was incredible. And then
solidarity.
And I had gotten hurt that year. So then my sophomore year of college, I had also gotten hurt. And I said, all right, I'm growing it out again. I'm just doing it. And then I would look super Italian sometimes like there. And so I said for headshot day, I have to slick the hair back, let it grow. You could see the chains. I tried to have them out, but they wouldn't let me. And then I said, no way I'm smiling. And I don't like smiling in my headshots anyway.
I get that.
So that's what happened. I didn't realize how much of an RBF I had that day, but I did. And then there were daily random college athletes posted that while I was on vacation. The amount of text I got last week about it was ridiculous. So then when I got my social media back, whenever I go on vacation, I shut it down. Don't go on it. So I got it back. I figured I'd change my picture over. But there's no way anybody believes that it's actually me if they're coming to my page for the first time. Like, this is a fake account. This is not real.
I'm not going to lie. It is a mixture of Kenny Powers, but like every college baseball player I've ever played beer pong with. And there are many of them. That guy is gonna be the ringer. He's gonna.
You don't want to play beer pong against that guy.
No, he's my teammate.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm done. And even like the times where, because I think I can drink and I can't because like I'm this big. He's like, I got you. I'll drink all of your beer and then some. Like, and then he's also entertaining the whole party. Like he's that guy.
And I will say that did happen in college quite a few times. One of my best friends in college, MK Maloney, she's tiny, so she could not hold her into the bargain. So we helped her out.
Did she think she could though?
Of course she did. And she was always on tables. She always found her way to elevated surfaces. But when you got her, she was a bulldog on the beer pong court.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I like when I go out with Dallas Braden, I die each time.
Yeah.
I'm actually dead right now.
And he's not the biggest guy either. So
no, but he loves to call me out. He's like, oh, you're not going to drink this. And I'm like, now I got to do it. So
now you don't have a choice.
I don't have a choice. And it's like, I die every time. And then you know what I do? I go out with him again.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I'm that girl. When it comes to the Royals, the one guy that we're always talking about is Zack Greinke. And I know you talked about like fantasy football stuff, but I don't want you to have to reveal anything like bro code, but who's Zack Greinke as a person and as a pitcher?
So I could give you the most recent example. So as a person, the Chipotle thing came out again. I saw it on Twitter, the meme of him being like, I'm not letting them win, so I'm not buying the guac. And I saw the tweet that said Chipotle's raising their prices. So then somebody quoted it with the picture of him saying whatever. So I screenshotted it and texted it to him in a group chat that we're in. I said, Zach, how are we feeling? And his response was, what did he say? He said something like, I'm even cheaper now. I just make my own guac at home. Or he said their guac's bad, something like that. It was funny. Whatever his response was super funny. Everybody gave him a bunch of grief about it. So that's just who he is. He's just he's comedic relief for everybody while also being a Hall of Famer, the richest person in the room, and just the best player in the room. So it's hilarious. I'm honored to have shared a clubhouse with him. I hope he gets a shot to keep playing. I hope it's with us. And yeah, I mean, he's just the best. He's one of my favorite teammates I've ever had. He made me feel welcome from the day that I got to the big league. So I have nothing but admiration and respect for Zack Greinke.
Yeah, I would love to be a teammate of Zack Greinke's. And it's interesting. We talk about his age because he's older, but you the other day said like, oh, I'm 26, I'm getting older. But it's funny because when I talk to the veteran guys, and veteran, I guess, is not as old as it used to be. It's now about service time. It was Aletimus Diaz I was talking recently, and he's like, the game's getting younger. Do you really feel like a 26-year-old should be considered, I don't say older, but the game is getting younger and you're 26 talking about like, I feel like I'm older.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a dinosaur sometimes when it comes to stuff. But I found out that Adley Rutschman just turned 26. So that made me feel pretty good.
Oh, that
helped. I are the same age. So he's a pretty good player. I think the biggest thing with the age thing is, technically speaking, I have 5 years left on my contract, which means I'll be 31 when I hit free agency, which means every analytical guy in the world will think that now I'm hitting my cliff because I'm at 31. So basically,
you're off my fantasy team when you have 30 birthday candles.
Well, in a dynasty league, I'm sure people probably hate me because I'm 26. If I was 20 right now, everybody would think, oh, he's got 15 years left. But when you're 26,
you were a fetus, first round all damn day.
It's crazy. So, but I hate to say it, when I do dynasty fantasy football leagues, I think the same thing. I'm like, all right, this guy's 30.
That's football though. You have like a negative 3-year lifespan in football.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to beat the age thing. I plan to play until I'm at least 38, 40. That'd be great. I want to see that 4-0. I got to stay healthy to do that. I can't stay healthy at 25, but at 26 and on,
you're getting it out of the way. You're like, I remember.
Yep. That's right.
Well, and that's what sucks too, is because you had an injury so early on, and like that's gonna follow you forever too. Like I feel like when it comes to when people scout, like, oh, if he stays healthy, and it's like, well, yeah, everybody gets injured.
Well, the best part about my injury is it's the exact same one. I went on the IL my rookie year, and then last year, same injury. And then we finally got it fixed. I decided to not get it surgically repaired. And then I needed to get it surgically repaired. So, I
maybe
like
if you were older and weren't stubborn, you would have gotten it.
And that is a conversation for a different day.
So funny. But it's interesting because when we attach all these things to, like, you were the up and coming guy, you want to say highly touted, what have you, which I want to say I'm good luck. I feel like you were on my show and then you got promoted
right before I got up to the big
yes,
leagues. I know for a fact that was the last interview I did before getting up.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And I did, because I just remembered it was like this big, like, I don't mind. I've asked so many people to come on shows, but for you, it was like a bigger deal. And it was like, well, just don't ask about promotion and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, now I want to, but like, it's also like, it was so bizarre because I could have had, I'm not saying you're not a big name, you're a big name to me, but if I like were to walk up to somebody, it's like, oh yeah, go ask. But with you, there was all this, like, these hoops and stuff, as much as hoops you can get with the Royals, and they're always pretty amazing with PR, but it was just like, just be careful. And then boom, you got promoted.
Yeah, that was a very strange time of life because, like, I had to, being in AAA, I had to have multiple conversations with our own media guy of being like, okay, I can't do this. Why not? Okay. All right. I understand. Like, that makes sense. They were never unreasonable. Everything made a lot of sense.
Totally.
My favorite part about, like, that time of life was was never known as a prospect. Like, I started my career, I was not on the top 30 list. And then I immediately, like, jumped up into, like, the top 10. And then like a week before I got to the big leagues, I was the number 1 prospect, but nobody knew because I lost my prospect eligibility. Like, 25. So people were always like, oh, not that it matters, because, like, I'm never one that's going to buy into prospect stuff, but people always be like, man, that sucks, you were never a top prospect. I'm like, well, fuck, like, I was, but then I got called up. Like, so that's how I always think that's funny.
But that's interesting though, because, like, when I talk to guys about that, it's half of them are like, oh, nobody cares. Sean Murphy gave me one of the most money quotes, and I was like, I can't believe you're a rookie. He was like, I don't care. The people who write those lists don't write the lineups.
Yeah.
But the next thing you know, he's like not talking to the media. I was like, I think I fucked that up for him. But it was really cool because we all have to attach a number to something.
Right.
And so, like, do we care about those lists? Do y'all care about those lists? Because they kind of do matter if you guys we're so obsessed with having a number attached to something.
Yeah, it kind of goes back and forth. Like, does it bother me that nobody knew that I was that type of prospect? No. It bothered me that I wasn't earlier because I felt like I could be. So it was always a competition with yourself of, I want to be the best. Like, I think I'm the man. I want to be the man. I want to be treated as such.
Yeah.
And it's nothing that anybody else can control. Like, I always knew that would never be what happened, but I performed and it was exciting. And in my mind at that time, it was like, man, I'd like this pat on the back, not knowing that years later it was like, stop being so immature. But I had to go through that to understand that, like, those lists don't matter, because Sean Murphy is right. They don't, not that they don't matter, because there's a full section of baseball fans that follow those prospect rankings and follow, and they're just fans of the game and they love it and they like following it. So it's important to write about it. But they don't make the lineup. And as much as, like, I always jokingly make fun of, like, Royals Twitter because it's very analytical heavy. Everything is analytics because everything is public data. So I always laugh when I see, different lineups that people have written or different things like that. So it's always funny to be on the inside, but able to see what's going on the outside too.
And that's a good point too, because when we think of, like, the numbers, and this could be a totally in-depth conversation about, like, giving extensions to somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of MLB experience. I think of Keith and stuff like that. But when it comes to the makeup themselves, it's the stuff that you guys see in the clubhouse. So do you see that? Were you a guy that everybody was like, well, he's ready for the bigs just because of who he is? But can you see those guys from across the locker room when you're like, he's going to be a Major League Baseball player? Perhaps the numbers don't show it.
Yeah, I fully believe so. I don't know what people thought about me. But I know that I've definitely looked around the locker room and thought, okay, that guy's got what it takes, or that guy in my mind doesn't. It doesn't mean that they won't or they will. It's just kind of my own personal opinion. But yeah, I definitely think that, like, the makeup stuff matters because it kind of shows what what years are going to look like, not what this day is going to look like, what this game is going to look like. It's okay, is this going to be able to be maintained? Because we've all seen guys have hot streaks or come up and play unbelievable, and then it kind of slows down from there. And I think the makeup stuff is where you kind of see where that happens. It doesn't mean a guy is a dick who started really well, and that's not what it means. I just think if you're looking at, if you look at a guy and he's takes care of himself, takes care of his family, he's on time, he does things the right way, he's going to have more of a chance to succeed than the guy who doesn't. And we all know there are definitely guys that don't do all those things and are just better than everybody else. And it doesn't make them bad either. They're just better, because at the end of the day, this is a results-based business. You have to perform no matter how you prepare. You have to perform, and the guys who perform are the ones that are going to play.
That's why I am an asshole, because I'm good at what I'm doing.
There you go. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
But as soon as you stop being good at what you're doing,
now
you're just an asshole.
Then I just have to be nice and stuff, and I don't have time. But when you were promoted, we all knew this was going to happen. When that did happen, you put that Major League Baseball uniform on. Walk me through the emotions you felt, and were there surprises that took place the moment you became a Major League Baseball player?
Surprises? No, I don't think so. Just from trying to be prepared for everything. I think it was just mostly it's a very strange thing, because it feels like the final test. Getting there feels like, okay, I did it. But then the problem is you want to do it for another 20 years. So you have to figure out how to stay. Every year you got to go and you got to make that team again and prove why you need to be in the lineup. So for me, it's just, okay, just the way that I'm very greedy. I'm very, very greedy. I want what's next all the time. I have a hard time of looking at, okay, this was great. I look more so at the other side where it's like, well, I could fix this. Let's make that better. So for me, it was, all right, I'm happy to be here. I'm not happy with where I am. I want to be better all the time. So it was, all right, sweet. It was almost like check the box. Good. We did it. Now we move forward in a better way. So for me, it was just, this is a great next step. I'm excited for the one after it.
I think that's good, though, because I feel like when you're in the minors, you know the steps you need to take. And then once you get to the bigs, there's still other steps to take. So, but do you kind of hate that you weren't able to take a step back? And I mean, were you able to smell the roses though still?
Yeah, there was a bunch of great veterans on that team that, or even just friends of mine that were on that team that weren't necessarily veterans, that really helped me. The biggest piece of advice I got was on the day that I made my debut is just run out to center field during pregame stretch and just look around and just take in what you see. It took, for me, it took the rest of that year and then coming back to Kauffman at the beginning of 2023 for the fences to not feel like they were 30 feet tall. Because for me, just everything felt big for the first few months. And then it finally slowed down. I'm curious to see when I get back into games if it's going to feel big again for a little bit before I'm able to settle down and slow the heart rate down. So I'm excited for that challenge too, of figuring out, because I'm so excited, how can I slow the heart rate down when it's time to go?
Definitely. Do you think that's going to be difficult now that you're coming back from injury, because you were just so antsy to get back?
I think at the beginning it will be, just because it's what I love to do, and it's just going to be so exciting. But it's something I've done my whole life, so I'm sure I'll be able to slow it down at some point.
This is my last one before I let you go. It's not really a question, but I'm kind of going to tease you a little bit. There was a headline that says Kansas City Royals stud posts exciting update on social media. You were talking about you were going through batting practice. They called you a stud in the headline, Vinnie.
Yeah, whatever. Things happen.
Do you agree? Do you agree that you're a stud?
If that's what the people want to label me as, I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. So hey, you can keep calling me whatever.
That was on fine. Sports Illustrated, by the way, not
maybe. Well, Sports Illustrated's going under, aren't they?
Yeah, so, maybe I don't really know, but the idea of Sports Illustrated.
I love Sports Illustrated, so the covers were always my favorite. Those magazines were the best when I was growing up. Always try to go get one because the cover is always the best.
I agree. I'm making a vision board now, and I cut up a couple things out of a Sports Illustrated.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. But yeah, stud works. I'm definitely in for that nickname. So thank you to Sports Illustrated for that.
I just thought it was funny there because, you're posting, you were coming back, you had a BP sesh, and then there it is.
Yep.
I don't know if I would ever be allowed to put that in a headline.
Yep. KC stud. That's right. So
Kansas City Royals stud posts exciting update on social media. It's a Jessica headline, but I don't know if I can get away with it now that
it's better than like Kansas City Royals jerk. Like Kansas City, it's better than any of those. So
that's more of the Jess headline.
Yeah.
But it's perfect. What else is funny is I think it was Alex Dickerson. Was it him? Forever ago. Like I introed him on the podcast. I called him a slugger, which you write it fine. When you write it, it's one thing. But when you physically say it out loud, he's like,
slugger's not an easy thing to say.
He said nobody's called me that since Little League. And I'm like,
my dad his thing. He likes to call like home runs dingers. And I hate it.
You don't like dingers?
I hate dingers. I don't know why.
Okay.
But my dad he has this shirt that he wears all the time that says, don't bunt, hit dinger, something like that. And it's just like, Dad.
What are your favorite terms to use? What are your favorite terms to use for home runs?
I don't know. I just know what I don't like. I'm a pessimist. I find what I don't like, not what I like. So
we don't like dingers. Everything else is fine. What else do you not like?
I don't know. I can't think of anything right now.
But we don't like dingers.
I'm not a fan, and if you are a fan, that's fine. I don't have any judgment towards you. I just know what I don't like, and it's really easy to complain. Like I've gotten really good at complaining. So that's
it's because you're older now. You're a dinosaur now, so it's easier to complain.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you hit a home run against us, I'm gonna tweet that you hit a dinger.
That's fine. I'll take the home run for sure.
And I'm gonna tag you in it too.
I hope I hit multiple. That'd be great.
Mad dingers.
Yeah, that's right.
Vinny, this was awesome. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was my chat with Royals first baseman Vinnie Pasquantino, one of my dear friends, close friend, love him. And he's a baseball player, but he's just a good person overall. I could talk to him all day. It felt like I was just like hanging out with my friend, talking about beer pong and doing what we need to do. So I'm glad that he stopped by. Make sure you are following everything on the Comeback and Awful Announcing. And thank you for tuning in to Short and to the Point. I'm still getting all your DMs, and I appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week. And like and subscribe. Give me 4 stars. 5 stars, actually. Why did I say 4 stars? What is 4 stars? That sounds like it's something familiar. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. And of course, to producer Philip for always dealing with all the things. And we will see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at Kleinschmidt JD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.